Good morning and happy Friday. Thank you for joining the CoreNet Mid-Atlantic chapter for this morning's installment of CoreNet Café, featuring end user, board member, and 2020 CRE Leadership Award recipient, Pat Flynn of Salesforce. I'm Brian Alvarez. I'm the co-chair of the Special Events Committee and Director of Business Development with the MOI. And with me as well is Brian Kaplan, co-chair of the Young Leaders Committee and Senior Project Manager, Interiors Director at Orr Partners. We're happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation, so please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom page. We'll try to address as many questions as possible. We're excited to introduce you to our reason for being here, Pat Flynn, again, Senior Director, Real Estate at Salesforce. This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about Pat's career, his start into CRE, advice, mentorship, and then finishing it up with a little discussion around return to the office. So Patrick, welcome, and passing over to Brian so we can get this started.
Morning. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks, Pat, for being here. This is very exciting. So we're gonna take it back first and go back to your younger days. So first question, did you want to be in CRE when you were growing up, or did you want to be, a doctor or a fireman or something most kids want to do?
Yeah, like every young child, was dreaming of a career in corporate real estate. It's all I could think about in grade school. No, you had those dreams as a kid of everything, and you just want to kind of grow up and have a great life. And I was lucky to fall into corporate real estate and having the career path to get me where I am now.
Awesome. So let's talk about that process then a little bit. What did you study in college? Did that lead to corporate real estate, or like you said, kind of how did you fall into it from college?
Yeah, so I stayed local here. I went to University of Maryland and had a really great group of friends around the region here, which allows you to have a big network, and that's an advantage coming out of school versus somebody who's not from the area. So just was introduced to the business under the brokerage side through a friend, and that was a big. And when I was in school, I did study in Australia for a semester, and that really got me. Wasn't able to act on it through work for a while, but really got me interested in international travel and international business. Took a little while to find the right role to get there, and that's what really gets me excited, is kind of seeing things not just here in the local area, but all over the world.
Awesome. That almost leads into one of our next questions, which is, how did you get your passion for the industry? And you might have just answered it there.
Yeah, when you find even just a little bit of success, however you define it, and you're starting to really enjoy what you're doing, the passion grows. And I can say over the last 5, 7, 8 years, I've become more ingrained in this business and loved it even more every year. And I say this a lot, that CoreNet has a lot to do with that, because the networking and the friendships you make are really critical. And that makes the business more fun. The more people you know, the more relationships you have, the more places you show up to and you see friendly faces, the better your life and your career are going to be.
Well, thank you for putting that plug in, because if you didn't, going to. Last question before I turn it back over to Brian. Do you have a favorite project, favorite accomplishment? I know, everyone's heard of the Salesforce Towers, and, is there something you've been involved in that you would say is your favorite so far?
Yeah, I think, two things really, and they've occurred in the last 5 years. One is starting at Salesforce and being a team of one. I had nobody to help me, no support. And the key about that is building the team. And I've been lucky to find incredible people in New York and Chicago, in Atlanta, and hire an incredible team that has helped build all these great things that you see in the news. But the hard work is everything that happens every single day with those people. So, none of this stuff happens without all that hard work. And the real quick story, though, is a really fun marquee project is putting the 2 roof signs up on the New York Tower. That is one of the hardest markets to work in, and to do something like that was a massive accomplishment. So that was a fun one.
Awesome. And it seems like you prepped everything, because that leads right into, I think, the next question.
Yeah, so you were talking about some of the team, your team members. Is there any specific certifications or that they either might have or that you have that you would recommend for somebody as they, they grow to be a CRE leader?
I think everybody needs to find their own enjoyment for what they do. I started out in brokerage and leasing, and I thought it was fun. I loved the site selection process and finding a building and touring different sites and analyzing and doing due diligence. That's kind of where I got started. So that's one of my first loves, but then transitioned into design and construction. And I really love seeing something demolished and designed and rebuilt. And that's kind of that's probably my, equal passion right now. So did I need a finance degree or anything special for that? Not at the time. I feel like if the young people who are the future leaders find what they really enjoy and just put your head down and try and become as much of an expert at as you can. And then going back to what we talked about a minute ago, just keeping your door open. The more people miraculously opportunities come. And if you're a hard worker and you're sharing what you love, things are going to find you. So specific certifications, I think it's really up to the individual. If you love finance, go get all the degrees and everything you need. If you want to be an FM person, I think you should pursue it and just chase that path.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you've kind of touched a couple different avenues of the CRE within brokerage, design, and construction. What do you think, as you're building a team, or maybe you personally, what do you think the hardest skill set was to either master or, to fill, right? If you're looking to find somebody and they have this, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get this person because they have that.
Yeah, it's usually just their combination of skill sets. And I'm never looking for somebody who's mastered everything because I haven't mastered everything. So you want somebody who's got a ton of passion, creativity, and just comes to work every day with, what we call a beginner's mindset. Somebody who's excited to learn. Every skill set's hard to find, of course, because the good talent is usually taken. But I think if you have the ability to, whatever company you're going to really fit into that culture, that's another key piece, is that, all the skill sets in the world, if you don't agree with or fit into that culture, it's not going to work. So you got to watch that really, really closely.
So, and kind of along those lines of just, the education side, I've gone back and forth of whether it's a good idea to go get my master's in the long run, right? I mean, you talk about the experience versus, an education or diploma. In your line of work, or, the people that you're looking at, do you see that as a valuable asset, or do you look at, 4 more years of experiences versus 2 years of getting their master's done? I mean, where does that fall into either your mind or your opinion?
Yeah, I think they balance. If you've got some extra years in the business versus an MBA, I think they're both really key. And again, it depends on if you're a book learner and you're a case study person and you go for that, that's what works for you. But if you're somebody who doesn't ever want to get back in another classroom again to get graded on something, you should put your head down and get your work done. And the important thing is to always keep as I say, put your head down, but keep your head up and look for opportunities. Like something like a stretch assignment. If you're not a finance person and you're in construction, well, meet your finance colleagues. Go open the door, knock on the door, do a Zoom call, understand what they're doing. To me, the biggest thing is understanding the broader marketplace and the broader parts of the business. That you can't just say you're not a finance person. You have to be. You have to be a finance person. You have to be design construction. You have to understand due diligence, transactions. If you want to be in corporate real estate, you really have to round it out. So any and all education is great. I support everything. And, you just have to keep your head up and be looking for all the disciplines and really start to learn them.
I think you might have answered my next question. So maybe we can elaborate on it. Talking about, let's say, looking back maybe 10, 20 years, was there any pieces of advice that you could give yourself, giving back? I know that you kind of just said, keep your head open, look at opportunities. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Or is that like, hey man, like keep your head open, meet as many people as possible, and fingers crossed, things will open up?
Yeah, always be learning for sure. There's things I talk with my colleagues as that example on the finance side that I come up with something new every conversation I have. I think if you go into work every day knowing that you can learn something and that you should, that's your best advantage. You're not going to master it, and be curious all the time with that beginner's mindset. And you're never going to get to the end of learning, especially in this business, because there are so many different things where it's going to take you.
Sure. So along those lines, I mean, was there anything that you spent a lot of time on that you were like, oh my gosh, I wasted a year researching this? Or, you talk to a finance person, you're like, oh my gosh, that was such a waste of my time. I'm not even utilizing that. Was there anything like that you spent a little bit of time on that you were just like, that was a waste?
I can't think of anything specifically, but if you feel that way, and you're in the moment, you need to constantly reassess whether it's where you are, what you're doing, what you're working on. And as I say, to have that beginner's mind or be curious about your time spent too. Am I spending time on the right things at the moment? Is this what's going to get me to the next level, or is this the right thing for the company or for the job or whatever it is? So continually assess. I know, and this is just a lesson. Everybody talks about goals. If you aren't planning your way through your year and assessing it constantly, that's going to be a big challenge, because if you can't see it and write it down, it's really difficult to get there.
Sure. So I think that's the done with me on my line in question. Sorry for the hard ones.
Well, that's all right. I love the beginner's mindset, by the way. I think that's great. So we're going to kind of hop into some more mentorship stuff. And I'd be remiss if I didn't get a quick plug in for the CoreNet Mid-Atlantic has a mentor-mentee program. So check it out. It's on the website. We're kind of getting things rolling this year, and it's pretty exciting. So with that said, what was the best piece of career advice that you've ever got?
Yeah, it's probably not just one single thing, but more of a theme, and it's really to go outside of your comfort zone. Go learn things. I mean, it's a huge world. Even in one company, there's huge opportunities that if you're willing to look around, you're willing to learn. I bet, as you mentioned, a mentor, there's somebody who's always willing to teach or coach or open you up to opportunities. And it doesn't have to be for career advancement. It could just be for just general learning. So get outside of your comfort zone. It's a massive world. And ask questions. I think there are a lot of people who sit in meetings and in webinars and things and let the world go by and are afraid to raise their hand, afraid to ask questions. I've found that usually the smartest people in the room are the ones who are asking the questions and not talking. They're the ones asking questions and not giving the coaching. So that would be my kind of two pieces of advice.
That's great. So then kind of going back to that mentor theme, if you had a mentor, what did you do to grow that relationship, right? On the younger side, if you're a mentee, any advice you have for them to just further that relationship?
Yeah. It's all about conversations and communication. Stay in contact with that person, depending on what the relationship is. And always be prepared. Again, going back to asking great questions. And, as with any relationship, you have to foster it to grow, whether it's you're the mentor or you're the mentee. Everybody's got to be involved and has to put in effort. Doesn't matter what relationship it is, you've got to put effort in to make it good. So have the vision with your mentor of what you all want to get out of it, and good communication, and then set a timeline to things. Are we going to do this for 6 months, 12 months, 5 years? Just have some definitions around things.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I personally probably need to get, better about that. So right after this call, I'll jump right on.
We all do, right?
Yeah. So, and then again, same theme. Was there a mentor? Is there someone in your life that's kind of really helped you get to where you are today? What made them influential? Anything that has helped you to get to where you are?
Yeah, a good friend of mine from University of Maryland, a couple of years older than I am, and he started out just like the rest of us. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do, but he went into a banking business, and he by far is outshining everybody in terms of production, in terms of business, et cetera. And it has nothing to do, he's very smart, but it has everything to do with his hard work. And I worked with him over some summers during school. And I'll never forget when he said to me, I asked him the same question twice. He said, "You can ask me anything, but don't ask me the same question twice if I've already given you the answer." So that was my indoctrination into the hard world of, you know, asking a dumb question. And his just every 6 months, 3 months, we talk. He's local to the area, and he'll ask me those questions that I haven't thought of yet. Of what am I going to do next, and then asking the why behind it. And sometimes, if you haven't thought through those things, you need somebody who's way outside of your line of work, outside of your business, who isn't a stakeholder, who just wants to see you do well. So that's key to keeping that kind of mentor relationship together, and then giving back to one another, right?
Yeah, no, and that's interesting because that's exactly how I got into the industry. A friend from college, and we kind of have the same thing where we pick each other's brains. So I would say that network that you get at school, then outside of school, I couldn't agree more with that.
Well, and the important part about that too is with CoreNet and with these other things like we mentioned before, they don't have to be your best buddy in the world. They could be a great work acquaintance that knows and respects you, and those opportunities come along that you aren't expecting, or if you need something. And just as a quick story, I've been laid off before, right? 2008, 2009 was the worst time financially in this region and in the globe. And I was out searching, and I could tell you, CoreNet was one of the first places I started digging into my contacts list. And some of the people on this phone might not remember a Rolodex or, physical address cards with people's name and phone number on them, but that's where I reached. And I said, I need help. I'm looking for something. I could tell you that was a game changer, and it makes you want to give back to the community that gave to you so much. So that's an important lesson for me.
Yeah, well, thank you for making our job easy on plugging CoreNet. So
if it weren't true, I wouldn't be saying it.
I completely agree. So we're gonna, I think, the career stuff and the mentor type stuff. Thank you. It's really interesting. We have probably 10 minutes left. So one, if anyone has any questions, and then two, I'm going to turn it over to Brian for kind of a little bit more of an open conversation on return to the office. What you're seeing. Obviously, we hear in the news, the Facebooks, the Googles, all of them that you guys compete with for talent. There's a new article every 3 days on they're taking more space, they're taking less space. So we kind of want to go into that a little bit. So Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I want this to be more of the open discussion part. So again, Q&A is right below. So ask any of these questions. I mean, Pat, just opening it up. I mean, what are you seeing, right? Like, open office, closed office, maybe not specifically to your own company, but what are you hearing, right? Like you can read the same articles that we all are, but I'm sure you have peers and counterparts at other companies. I mean, what is the discussion that's happening? In the closed doors, right? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, in my conversations with other corporate real estate, peers or leaders, it's interesting because I've never been surveyed so much in my life about almost the same topic, all during a pandemic. How are you feeling? How's your work product coming? Do you want to go back to an office? That's the general, theme here. And the way I'm seeing it is that there's the three types of workers that we have out there: fully remote people in the office every day, 5 days a week when it's safe to return. And then that middle category where it can be defined as flex. You come in 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. My view is that flex category has grown exponentially, or will grow when people can go back to the office safely. Is that people are going to want more flexibility in their lives, and that's wonderful. I think that's where we should be. I think there was a lot of that going on in the kind of the shadows and not formalized in companies before, where you had people only coming in 3 days a week consistently, but it wasn't their mandate, it wasn't their agreement. It was just a loose agreement with their managers. So I think you'll start to see things get a little more formalized where, hey, Brian's coming in 3 days a week. Okay, well, that we're going to set the space up for you to only be there 3 days a week because we have other people coming in. So we can't go over capacity. So I think corporations are going to shift their requirements. You might see the interiors of offices instead of a sea of desks. Maybe there's not 200 desks on the floor, maybe there's 100. And the rest are seating arrangements that allow for collaboration or a team meeting. Probably a little less heads down work where somebody just shows up and puts their head down and, prepares for meetings or does things like that. I think there'll just be more flexibility overall.
So along those lines, I mean, I know you're talking about, the actual space, that people come to, right? That physical space, whether it's Salesforce, Facebook, Google, what have you. What happens at home, right? Like, has there been anything for HR conversations that you're hearing about where they say, well, like your internet speed's got to be this, or, hey, we're going to allow you to have this chair at home or this desk at home. Has there been any discussion that you're hearing about of, you're talking about unformalized, right? If somebody decided to go at home, maybe they're working at their own kitchen counter, but now if it's formalized, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to watch the world head home and start to figure out video cameras and places and spaces and noises. And you've watched the evolution of Zoom or the explosion of Zoom, and then features coming out that will automatically mute if the sharp noises, like if the dog barks in the background, right?
Yeah.
So the advance, I don't know how many years ahead it is, but it's definitely sped up. So my belief is that everybody working at home, their company should support that effort 100%. I haven't heard anybody that's not supporting it, but it needs to be a set of guidelines. Here are the basics you need to have. And I think what companies should be doing is passing along corporate discounts to end users at home. So you have a comfortable, ergonomically sound place to work, because I could tell you, even in my own home, people are sitting on kitchen chairs that aren't comfortable, and you're supposed to sit there for an hour, not 8, not 10 hours. So you've got to provide your employees with the best setup possible. And if they're going to do that 50% of the time or 100% of the time, they need the resources. Does that help get to the answer you're looking for?
No, it definitely does. I mean, that's been a discussion that we're having with our own company, and another along those same lines is bringing on new people, right? I think there was an article that you guys have, I think 50,000 employees. We're maybe not to that point, so we hire one person every month, let's call it. So the onboarding for us is maybe a little bit easier, but how does that work for a large company where they might not even meet their boss because the boss always works from home, right? How does that work in terms of onboarding? Have you seen any challenges, or I guess, can you foresee any challenges with that, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, honestly. For the time being, gone are the days where you have an in-person interview and you're meeting people and you're walking around, you're checking into a building, and think about that whole experience. And even just acquiring talent, that's a hard thing. People are doing it through the desktop, saying, is this an opportunity I want? And they're learning about the company that way. So these calls, very, very scripted and catered of what we want to accomplish, outlining what that employee or prospective employee should be looking for, how we're going to handle it. I think the more communication you can give, the better. And then once that person is onboarding, it should be very much curated to the world that it is now. You can't go by the old playbook of, well, we'll just send this handbook that we used to put on their desk, we'll send it electronically. That doesn't work. You really need to spend time, effort, and energy for these new employees. I've got 2 people on my team over in London who've never been to one of our offices. They started last year during the pandemic. It's really hard, but a lot of communication, a lot of phone calls. We use Slack and text and all those things. Just people need to feel like they've got, the connection to, whether it's their manager or their peers, kind of all the time. When you're new at an office, you tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, can you help me with this? Well, those days are gone for the time being. So I think a ton of communication is key.
And you tapped on another thing, the talent war, right? How does that play into, the flexibility or giving somebody an option, right? If one company is like, look, we need everybody to be back, and somebody might need that flexibility. How does that play in with the talent war between all the companies that you try to steal from or try to recruit from? I mean, how does that play in with the flexibility and the offerings that you guys give?
Yeah, I think the job type is critical, right? If you're able to be flexible, it certainly helps the person, in their everyday life. That's what they choose. And then it helps the, flexibility of the office to not have to have a seat dedicated for that person. So the job type, but if you're a facilities manager, you're in there every single day. You have to be, there's no question about it. So I think we're going to do a lot of figuring of this out in the next year as people start to return safely. And that flexibility, as we've said, is going to be critical to every role. If your kids have soccer practice, you need to leave, you should be able to leave. It's a 24-hour world almost.
Yeah. Brian, you mind if I jump in with one of the questions that came in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Great.
I think, Pat, you kind of touched on this a little bit with the new hire question, but any advice on getting multiple business units with different goals to kind of communicate and buy in virtually?
Restate that for me. Sorry.
I guess, do you have any advice or lessons learned or experience on, and it goes to kind of what you were talking about with your colleagues in London, on how to communicate across different business units, right? How do you guys communicate with the other teams now that, like you said, you can't just go walk down to the finance department and
right.
mention Slack and all that? Is there any tools or any advice that you have on kind of that cross pollination that happens with, in workplace jargon, adjacencies, right?
Yeah.
How does that happen virtually?
Yeah, the word that I use and we use all the time is alignment, right? And during this virtual time, it becomes a little more painful because you don't have those quick, hey, after a meeting, I'm going to talk to you about this, and we solve it right then. Maybe that has to be a call that's set up. Gone are the days where people just pick up the phone and call people. Everybody's surprised if they get a phone call. It's kind of weird. So you feel like you have to text somebody and say, hey, are you available? The times have changed so much, but creating the cross-functional alignment is one of the most important things that I do in my job every day, is making sure people are informed as we make decisions and making sure our leadership is informed. So whatever method or mechanics you use, we use everything from Slack to a team call to a weekly meeting reads out on the highest profile projects that need to get executive alignment. So you have to create whatever works inside your own organization, but having that alignment is critical.
So I think there was one other question that came in. I'll read it verbatim. You mentioned starting out as a team of one and building out your team globally. Did you build that team all internally, or did you leverage third-party companies as partners to fill out many of those roles? I guess probably in reference to your London, individuals, and, across the world.
Yeah. So I was lucky when I started that I was this team of one, but there's a lot of interest. People think that projects and design are super sexy, so there's a lot of interest in it. And so when we put out a requirement to hire somebody, we usually get a lot of interest. The best news was I was able to bring somebody internally who had a lot of experience in Salesforce, but needed a lot of teaching. So there's that balance. I've got to spend a lot of time teaching, but I've got a great person who knows our company. And then all the other hires we've made are external. And we typically don't leverage third-party companies or recruiters. We use all internal. At least that's what I think. I don't think we use anybody else. But the talent pool out there is massive right now. And there's a lot of really smart, young, talented people who are ready to work and do great work. And that's promising for me.
Yeah. So I think we're going to round it out with two last questions. One, there's a ton of furniture and technology floating around, from workspace shields to temperature checking devices, and others, right, that have been out there. What basics do you believe that companies should be spending their dollars on to help people return to work, call it safely or just in general?
That's a tough one because whether it's with safety, PPE, or even just real estate, everything is level set. There's nobody in corporate real estate as of last March who'd been through a pandemic that shut everybody down and went to their homes. So we're all figuring it out. I would certainly err on the side of caution, and being more conservative. You saw a lot of companies last year saying, well, we'll return in the fall, September, October. I think some of the big financial institutions in New York tried it, maybe tried and failed, or tried and adjusted. And that's why a lot of the bigger companies just said, listen, let's get people through the school year. Honestly, I mean, let's let these families manage their kids, and even people without kids. Like, let's give some surety so we don't keep moving the goalposts to springtime, summer. So I think that's the first piece, is picking a conservative date where you can do things safely. And as far as technology and things, I don't know what's right. I think you have to rely on the guidance, looking from the CDC as the main line, and then going out to your state and local, and then your business, how you all have to operate. I know many general contractors haven't really skipped a beat. People are in the office, people are on job sites, and they've done pretty well with that. So I think it depends on your individual business, but your business leaders are going to be the key to know what the pulse is on an individual office.
Sure. Brian, you want to take the last question and we'll round it up?
The last
from Cheryl.
Yeah, perfectly timed. As we're closing out a Zoom, do you think that employees should be required to be on camera, or should they kind of be given a pass due to this Zoom fatigue?
That is a tough one too. I think my children should be required to be on camera because I know they're not paying attention. This is kind of a philosophical one on an individual basis. I'm a big believer in not multitasking. I'm a big believer in paying attention and focusing on one thing because I can't do other things well. So my team, our culture, we're all on camera on every meeting, 100%. It's rare that you're not on camera, but if you have to do something, go do it. Turn off your camera. I think we're getting to a very much a performance-based culture, that being on the camera to me is only important for the connection. I'm not worried about your work product. I know you're doing your job, but I like to talk to a face rather than the blank screen. So this is the best we've got right now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, speaking of that and Zoom fatigue, I guess we'll close it with that. So thank you, Pat, for joining us. And thank you to everybody that joined in. Quick shout out for some of the events coming up. February 24th will be an end user roundtable open to end users only. The next education event is March 3rd, discussing the Metro DC real estate market overview. And then if you're new to the chapter, we're hosting a new member orientation, really to learn more about the chapter and meet the executive committee on March 16th. So stay tuned as we're looking to have some more events this year. And thank you all for joining, and have a great Friday and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, guys.